Hey guys, Seán here. Welcome to another episode of the Any Given Runday Podcast.
Start that again.
We'll start that again.
Yeah.
Or no, let's keep it going. Let's keep it going.
No, you go and keep going.
Cat breath over here.
Yeah, right, we're in now.
Yeah,
so Eric here, welcome to this week's
we restarted.
Any Given Runday Podcast. I'm here with Aaron, Kat, and Conor. So this week, what are we talking about?
No, you. Hey guys, Seán here. Welcome to another episode of the Any Given Runday Podcast. I am joined once again by Eric, Conor, and Aaron. This is a take two, so some are laughing at this. But we're going straight into today's podcast, and as a lot of stuff last week, we were mentioning different types of runs and what the long run was. We're talking about easy runs and how sometimes you feel like you're not pushing yourself. Like Aaron, you said sometimes the mileage didn't matter to you. Some people refer to that as easy runs. There's different types of runs, interval runs, type of tempo runs. So I thought I'd start off this week's podcast with just explaining those type of runs, and then Eric, you can, for lack of a better word, translate them into what it would be for your heart rate training. So the easy run would be used to build up your tolerance, so to running and reducing injury, and that would be somewhere around 60% of your maximum heart rate. You should be able to hold a conversation while you're able to do that, and it's good for your heart, it's good for adding miles into the legs, and good for that building up your weekly mileage without force yourself too much. Like Eric, you said in last week's podcast that you could use an easy run on a day off. So what would that be in terms of BPM?
So in terms of your BPM, you're looking at between 118 and 136 beats per minute, zone 2. So it's very minimum effort.
Yeah,
very minimum.
I mean, in terms of your if those of us that's still stuck with our Fitbits, that's the first part. That's before that's the fat burning zone.
Yes, fat burning zone. It's around Fitbits.
That. It'd be around that for those that have a Fitbit like myself. The next one is our long run. So I've said it before, like the percentages of your total weekly mileage should be around 25%. Around that, as in, like, if it's a lot more, it just means that you're increasing the risk of injury by doing too much in the one go. And I've read a lot of people talk about that it shouldn't be more than 2.5 hours, no matter what your your fitness is. Like, there's no point. Like, even if you did a marathon and you're expecting to do it in 5-6 hours, that if you're running for long than 2.5 hours, just the recovery time stuff doesn't make too much sense of that. But once again, your BPM, Eric, what would you say?
So zone 3 is where you should be for your marathon. That's between 137 and 156 beats per minute. So that's what you should be aiming for. That's where your heart should be to continuously stay at that threshold.
So you would consider your long run to be your marathon pace run?
No, my long run is zone 2. It's easy.
Zone 2, okay.
Easy, and that's like I've never done over 2.5 hours because again, it's not about distance. It's about just putting the miles in with the heart, the legs, the mileage. Anything over that, like you said, recovery time, it's just going to be too much. So
100%. And after the long run, I suppose that you kind of touched on a little bit would be your marathon pace run. And I've heard suggested that some people talk about it should be like your marathon run should be around 3 minutes slower than your fastest 10k, because obviously while you're doing 10k you're not going to build out, and these are only guidelines. That's not an exact science. That's what some people would say. So let's say if you did a 10k in 50 minutes, you would base your marathon, and there'd be a 5 minute kilometer. You got your abacus in that one, Aaron? And then if you did a 3 minute slower, like a 53 minute for 10k, so you're talking about around a 5:20 pace to build over that. And that's just guidelines for someone looking for their marathon pace. Obviously you'd test it out and see how you'd feel holding that. Eric, what do you
so the long run from last week? So as I'm into 8 weeks now, I'm starting to move away from the zone 2 the long run not being totally zone 2. So
gotcha.
The first 2 hour and 45 is zone 2, and then it gets into zone 3 where you're running at your marathon pace for the final half hour to 45 minutes of your training session. Which is great, because the more tired you get, your heart rate is teetering towards that, so it comes at a point where you're starting to slow down, and then you can actually transit into the next zone and kick on to what you hope to be your marathon pace while maintaining the zone, or at least close to it.
And how do you feel like going from like 145 and then going faster for that last hour?
I know, a lot of people
rough.
think that's bizarre, but it's actually such a relief when you're going slow. it's pounding, the knees are feeling it.
Yeah.
You're just, it's monotonous. And then when you get into a bit of pace, you lengthen your stride. It feels a lot more comfortable. It feels like your normal pace. Whereas when you're doing the slow run, you're actually you feel like you're holding yourself back in your heart rate, and it's when you get that half hour, you might be tired, but you start to see the pace drop. The kilometers start going up a bit quicker, and you're like, I only have to do this for 30 minutes. It's like you've just hit a reset button on yourself.
The legs don't feel sore?
Not really, no. Like in the first 400 meters, if you focus on your breathing, if you concentrate on your breathing, after 400 meters you settle at the next pace. And yes, by the time you finish now, the sweat has increased, the heart rate is up, and you are tired because you've done 2.5 hours. But you can definitely, I get a sense of relief from getting away from that slow pavement pounding pace. Like, it's when I'm running that slow, all I'm conscious of is where I'm putting my feet, and because I run terribly as a runner, so I'm focusing on them, and it kind of distracts me. But then once I get into my natural run, then around that zone 3 pace, I get, because I'm like, it's just nicer to run at what's more comfortable of a pace. So, and then it's kind of like a reset in time, because you're like, it's only 30 minutes then. Gotcha. I've done 2 hours, you know, what's another 30? It is a nice, now it takes a while to get to that mentality, and the little trick I use is the breathing as well. Very good for the first 400 or 500 meters. It really helps you settle at a different pace.
What do you mean by the breathing?
So, well, you'll notice as well, if you're ever using any heart rate training things, if your heart rate trends out of a zone, if you focus on what way you're breathing, you'll probably find it's a real shallow breath that you're taking. Right. Whereas if you actually take, as the same way you would if you were doing breathing exercises to relax, taking deep, long, low breaths and settling yourself, shaking out your hands, relax, and then take another one, long release, you'll find the heart rate drops by about 6 or 7 beats per minute once you focus on your breath. So breathing is really, really important when you're transiting through these zones and maintaining the zones, because if you're not breathing right, you're burning more energy, your heart is working harder for longer. So it's really important, and that's why when you do go up into the zone, there tends to be a spike in the heart rate. When you go in, it'll try trend through zone 3 up into zone 4. So that's why it's important, just when you're transiting, focus on the breathing, and then it just becomes kind of natural then after that. When
you're doing your breathing, do you go by X amount of strides, breathe in, breathe out, or is that a bit?
A lot of people go every time your left foot hits the ground on three strides, breathe out, breathe in. I'm just more of a do what feels right. So gotcha. I think of it as, again, like hitting a little reset button. I'll take a couple of big deep breaths, and then I'll settle into just a nice rhythm. It's probably the best way to. I exaggerate 3 or 4 very big breaths as I transit through and let the pace come through, and just kind of keeps everything settled.
I think one of the reasons that a lot of people will find it hard to go from an hour 45 at a certain pace and then build it up is because the type of running that I'd say myself, and probably yourself, Aaron, correct me if I'm wrong, this would do most would be the threshold running. And the threshold running would be like where you're looking forward to the end of the race. Those last few kilometers are tough. They're doable, but they're still tough. You're like, I'll get this last 2k, whether it's a 5k, 10k, 50, whatever it is. You're building at a certain pace that when it's done, you're like, oh jeez, I could have done much more than that in terms of pace. Would I right say a few, Aaron? Was it more easy runs adding miles?
It's kind of like the last K. Last K, I'm nearly like, hope this comes quick.
But yeah, it's something that threshold running is like, you're going for at least 30 minutes out there doing it, and you are building towards, unless you're doing a 5k. Well, it depends on your pace doing a 5k, but you're building towards getting those last few kilometers in, and that can just, it gets the heart rate going, and help clear out your lactate and just improve your endurance. So that's one reason some people do that. Obviously people do marathon pace because
I suppose that's the beauty. Like, you guys go for the threshold run, so you set that pace, and that's you for 10k, whereas I would do intervals with my threshold. So like where you're saying mentally, I hope this lasts, I just want this to be over, I'm absolutely struggling here. Mine is broken down into, it's only a kilometre at the threshold, and then I've a minute and a half off, and then I've only to do another kilometre again. So you can break the pain down, I suppose, into shorter milestones. Yeah. So I'm getting maximum effort, but I'm taking a break, and then I'm going maximum effort again. And what you'll find is you're holding a maximum effort longer. So when you go on your run, you'll probably notice, as using your Fitbit, your heart rate is increasing as the kilometres go up, because you're trying to maintain something you started with. Whereas when you take that break in the middle, you give your heart a chance to relax. So for that first 500 metres of your next interval, you're actually getting your maximum output. You're getting the best quality of threshold running you can get in terms of setting a pace, getting the body used to a higher pace. as opposed to being maxed out. Now, as you get into fourth and fifth, then you start to notice.
And that would be the difference between threshold running and more the interval training, where your heart rate can go higher because you're only doing it for 3 to 5 minutes, and then you could drop it right back down. Whereas if we work threshold, myself, Aaron, and I get to you in a sec, Conor, on what you do, we can't go 90% of our heart rate and maintain that for any period of time, because we just it just won't be there.
Keel over and die,
Yeah, and we don't really want to keel over and die because we've got another 700 podcast episodes over the next couple of weeks to get into the
after you do that, you can do what you like.
Whatever. Conor, out of those types of running plans, long runs, marathon pace, threshold, interval, easy runs, which one do you relate to more, and what would be your kind of training strategy using them?
Yeah, so training strategy obviously is kind of, it's dictated to a certain extent by our hurling sessions as well. So I suppose just to kind of give you an idea of what my week looks like. So obviously we do a team gym session on a Monday. I tend to try and get my long run in then ideally on Tuesday, with a gym session myself in on the Wednesday. We then do another field session on a Thursday. I do my last gym session of the week on a Friday, recovery session for myself on Saturday, and then or alternatively we'll play a match or training session, and it'll either happen on the Saturday or Sunday. So my recovery session will fit in around that. But for our pitch sessions, what we're doing at the moment is it's focused, I suppose, in essence around intervals. So a lot of our runs we do are mass runs. So for anyone that doesn't know, it's a maximal aerobic speed runs, and what they are is it's essentially you're working incredibly hard where your heart would likely be zone 3 or 4 likely for 3 minutes or a certain period of time or a certain amount of runs or distance, and then there's a break. So for me, we're obviously doing that twice a week, and then for my own kind of personal or long runs, then what I'm doing is I'm working to a threshold or to a marathon pace. So laugh at the seagulls in the background.
I know it was Aaron, but sure, Aaron.
So that's how I operate it.
Yeah. You're saying now when you do your mass run, maximal
aerobic speed, zones 3, zone 4.
I would say it's near zone 4, zone 5 if you're going maximum effort.
So I think.
How are you judging that?
So again, I was wearing and have been wearing the Fitbit.
in your actual hurling session, because obviously you're not looking up and down and things. So most people listen to this, they won't have, a lot of people probably won't have Garmin's or Fitbits, or like when my Fitbit, I only see it at the very end. They'll look at it and go, I was up in the red for quite a bit there. But when you're doing your mass runs, how are you judging by your body, or is it pretty much a coach going, you got 40 seconds?
Correct.
How do you go on?
Exactly. So look, I suppose the way that they're set up is that there's a distance set dependent on your fitness level, which was we did a fitness test earlier on the season or a couple of weeks back, and there's a distance set that you have 3 minutes to do 9 runs. Okay, so what you have to do is you have to get up and back within a minute. All right, so I couldn't give an exact distance of how far we're running. It feels quite far.
Yeah.
But certainly by the time you come to that last run, you're breathing heavy, your heart rate is spiking. And when I go back and look at the Fitbit then afterwards, my heart rate tends to be kind of in around 170 or in around that. So I'm not sure what that would.
Yeah, that's up the upper end of zone 4.
So it is incredibly there's a very high level of energy exerted doing those runs, and that's why I suppose when I look at them, my own longer runs, then my attitude is, well, I don't need to be trying to push myself any harder than the pace I'm going to look for in the marathon. Obviously the idea for my journey is that it's about kind of being able to marry the two schools of thought. That's why I'm not running every night of the week. It's because I'm working within a hurling kind of situation or a hurling environment, and that's why when I go out my long runs, then it's very much a case of working to a pace or working to a distance. And I suppose similar to you and Aaron, you kind of both mentioned that when it comes to the last kilometre or whatever, and you finish that run, you're kind of like, I'm not sure I could have gone any further than that now.
Yeah.
I think that there's a little bit of a psychology attached to that as well. If you tell someone to just run until they stop, they'll run an awful lot further than if you told them to run 10 kilometres.
Gotcha. How, Eric, you touched on this earlier. Conor, how does your breathing change when you do mass runs, long runs? Do you even yourself, Aaron, do you guys pay much attention to your breathing, or just kind of like get through it?
get through this.
I gave him the out. I can see him. He gave me this blank look. I was like, I have no idea how to answer this.
Yeah, well,
you just get through this.
Like sometimes you're there going up a hill and you're just out of breath, and like you're just like, okay, well, I'll breathe a bit more in this, and then like you can like hear yourself absolutely just like, I don't know, pretty much almost done.
Did you ever try though, when you're in that mode of suffering, taking a really large deep breath and trying to reset?
Kind of like, I don't know.
See, or I remember when I started back even after the sickness, there gets to a point where you're trying to take the deep breath, but you're so tired that you're actually like, fuck that, and you're just you know, like you haven't even got the energy to try and control the breathing.
Just get to the top of the hill. Like once you get to the top of the hill, then it's, you know,
take a deep
easy
breath
enough from there. Like on, like, oh, it's going to be easier than it was before.
Any changes for you, Conor, doing the breathing?
Look, it's something that I'd be conscious of, as in throughout the run or throughout the session. In that, you know, once you're going to hit a point where you're starting to get, you know, particularly tired or your heart is spiking, that you kind of take a second and just try and bring it under control. But I wouldn't say it's conscious. You know, I'm not consciously saying, okay, well, now I need to kind of give myself 5-6, you know, really deep breaths to reset myself. And it's probably something that maybe I should look into and probably will be really helpful.
There's
what do you do? You're asking all the questions.
Well, I'm asking the questions. Before I answer what I do, which is very similar to what Aaron does. There's a lot of talk I would read on nasal breathing. Now I struggle big time breathing through my nose, and they say it's a lot clearer and stuff. But they reckon now, I've heard people that be a big proponent of nasal breathing and the power of breathing. I tried to listen to an audiobook on the art of the breath, and there's a lot of stuff goes into it. But I've heard people that are big on nasal breathing say that Kipchoge, I keep butchering his surname. I hate saying it because I'm afraid I keep butchering it. But anyway, when he did the 2-hour marathon, broke that record, that a lot of his breathing would have been nasal breathing, just with the blood flow and stuff. It's hard to do. But what people would do to practice that would they do the easy runs, and they try and get through the easy runs doing nasal breathing. Now I've tried to do it. I've tried walking, just doing nasal breathing, and I struggle. Walking, I get out of breath just doing that. But over time, it seemingly is an advantage.
When you say nasal breathing, is that exclusively just in and out through your nose, or is it in through your nose, out through your mouth?
Is it out through your mouth?
I think it's you know what? Now you put me in the spot there. Actually, I've actually heard in through the mouth, through the nose. I think it's in through the nose, and because
through the mouth.
It's the filter through the nose. That it makes the air a lot clearer.
But supposedly, I mean, that's the correct way to breathe in general, though. Anyway,
but we don't do it.
We don't do it at all. And there's a lot of mouth breathers sitting at this desk right here now.
I can't breathe through my nose sitting here. Like it's terrible. I broke it when I was playing ball younger, and it just it's all no breathing.
Yeah, and even we don't breathe right in terms of, like, a lot of us are chest breathers. Like we wouldn't take a full inhale into our diaphragm and get that kind of energy stuff. They say, have you ever heard of Wim Hof? He's the Iceman. He's breaking all sorts of records.
He just does the breathing in the
this is the free
cold
water.
Yeah,
he's had all, like, I think he
just sits into ice cold water, like breaks ice and jumps in. He just sits there breathing away, not about it for half hour.
But he credits all that to his breathing, and I think he's a big proponent of nasal breathing as well. And like he'd set all sorts of records, and cause he's known, like, he does all these mad hikes. I think he did he do Everest or something in just a pair of shorts?
He went up something
crazy mountain, just a pair of shorts, the boots was all he wore, because he can handle the cold so much just because of his breathing. Like, now I feel like an idiot even compare myself in any which way to that, but if I use a sauna afterwards, the cold shower, I'll take a big deep breath in, and as I hop in the cold shower, I'll breathe out just to try and last in there as long as I can. So there's something to be said for the breathing, and it might be that extra little push, extra little advantage. But like I said, I'm still struggling to walk with just nasal breathing there.
No, it's something very interesting. I think, you know, it's when you think of it, something that could potentially be that simple, you know, and could increase your performance. I think it's well worth having a look into.
I only notice it from the simple of I've gone to 140 beats per minute and I need to be at 136. I take a couple of deep long breaths and down it comes into 134, 133. So
and away you go.
It makes a difference in that element, and it really it does help you keep focused when you just switch off to focus on your breathing for maybe 200 meters, and then the brain starts to wander again for the long runs. It is good. It is.
I'll eventually answer your question. Actually,
so how do you do?
What my biggest mistake was, and I've said this before, is I'll take off like a bat out of hell and I'll just go. So, and I realised after a kilometre or two, I'm like, my breathing's all over the shop. And then I'll try and control my breathing, take my deep breaths in through the nose, out through the mouth, and slow it down and ease into a pace from there. Like I posted 2 weeks ago, I did a 10k around the farm, new place I'm living now, and I had no idea the route. I used the app just to find a 10k loop, and I end up on a massive main road between Maynooth and Naas.
Oh yeah.
And all the bends and stuff. There's no paths to.
Did you check the motorway? Did you?
Seán on the M50. I like to run.
But there was trucks coming every which way, and I was jumping in the ditches and all the rest, and I ended up on a 2k just uphill to the last. And
that's nice.
It broke me. And between that and jumping ditches, I was well over I had to be well over 50 minutes, and I wasn't, and I couldn't figure out why. I'm like, how the hell did I do it in 49? Or it was 48, 49 minutes, something like that. But it was like for a 9 point something k, I was like, I should have been well over that. I should have been longer, because I went 2k uphill and I was dodging trucks. There was no way I couldn't have. And what happened was there was a downhill to start, and I took off like a bat out of hell. So I just went straight down. And I actually set a personal best for like 4 minutes and 3 seconds doing a 1 kilometre, and it was
all downhill.
It was all downhill. Like I was like, man, I'm a legend. But after that, I went like 4:30, and the next one was 4:20, the next one was 4:40. Then I averaged around the 5 for a little bit, and then at the last 2k, it was like 5:30, near 6 going up those hills. So
still, that's a good pace going up that hill.
Yeah, it was just
like I did my hill runs. Like part of my Saturday mornings is hill running.
Yeah.
And then what I did actually in the prep for the last marathon was I just kind of picked an area that kind of had an uphill downhill, and then it was only there on Saturday morning I was like, I'll just do it on a treadmill and I can set a hill. I was like, I don't have to go anywhere. So I was like, how have I not done this? I've been like picking places. I was like, will I run up Ticknock? Will I find this hill? I was like, and then I was like, just go on a treadmill.
And it's on fire,
and it was so hard. I've been absolutely bluffing my hill runs the entire time, and now I'm on the treadmill, and I have to say I suffered. I had a 6 minute 40 kilometre pace, 7.5% or whatever gradient, and I had to hold it it was 3 intervals of 8 minutes, holding for 8 minutes. And it was the heart going straight. So I ran at the warm-up pace at that pace, and I was like, this is a reasonable pace to hold. Let's see how the hill. As soon as the incline came in, I was under severe pressure. And I'm terrible on hills, but I have to say this could really change. Change how I
one of the reasons I would use the incline as well on treadmill is because I get bored using the treadmill, and I got posted there 2 weeks ago where me and you talked about this, Eric. We had the same problem. We're going for a long run, and after an hour the thing knocked off, and I was like, actually tell them what you ended up doing.
I was in the aquatic centre working out in the gym, and one of the ladies who I know, I was on coming up 59 minutes. I was like, right, turn on that treadmill to 13 and put a little incline on it. And then once that stopped, I jumped off and straight onto the other treadmill, so I had a fresh hour to go on one of my long runs. It was like an hour and 20 I had to do intervals, but I just refused to stop on the treadmill because it just cuts off. It's like, no, you're about to die, stop.
And that's what happened to me. It just cut off, it died, and I'm like, what the hell is this? After an hour it just stops. It goes, you're done. And I was like, so I started it back up again at half k, and I was like, feck this anyway. I just knocked it off and went down to the side. I'm like, I'm done with it. I was just, because it ruined my flow, and that's why I was asking you earlier about when you go from 145 and then just jump up and change flow. I'm like, once I stop, I'm done. But what I like to do sometimes with the treadmill to do intervals and keep myself entertained, because that hour can be, no matter what you're playing, that hour can go by slow. I would pull up the incline every 30 seconds. I'll go up 0.5, then I'll go up to 1, I'll keep going till I get to 10. I'll get to, off the top of my head, I think it's 5 minutes to 10. I think it's 5, after 5 minutes get to 10 or whatever it is.
It's 0.5.
And then I'll drop it down until if I wanted like a 10-15 minute run, I'll keep putting it up to a certain distance, and then I'll put it down and try and maintain that pace, and it gets so difficult. And then like in your head, I don't know why I thought it the first time, I'm like, sure, once it goes up to 10, I'll be going downhill after that. It's like, no, you're not going downhill, Sean. It's just a slight decline. You're still going uphill. Like, until you go to flat. The treadmill does not go downhill. I thought that in my head. I'm like,
the treadmill does go downhill. You can put it downhill.
Don't tell me that. Well, I'll be setting all sorts of records now.
As much as a lot of people give out about the treadmill, but I think the treadmill is great for pace setting. myself and buddy of mine, Tom Dixon, he's a fantastic runner, and he would also swear by, in terms of like getting your pace back by going on the treadmill, it takes away the thinking of, when you're outside and you've a bit of wind, you've a hill, you've this, that and the other. If you can just go on and set, I want to run at a 3:45 kilometre, just set it and hold on for dear life. Eventually you build up that memory of, I can actually run this quickly. And I've noticed since doing a bit of treadmill, doing a bit of outdoors, a bit of treadmill, that my pace is starting to come back, because my body's getting like, I went on a run and I was running at 4:30 and I was like, how did I ever run the marathon at near this pace? And then the more I did on the treadmill, then I went back out and I was at the 4:20. I was like, oh yeah, I can see this is starting to come back. And we actually kind of, I know there's a lot of people that give out about a treadmill, but when you're doing something short, sharp, you're trying to maintain a quick pace, uphill, downhill, it's constant. And that's the beauty about it. You're maintaining that constant level for you to train at, and that's the constant hill, the constant pace, and it's brilliant. I think a treadmill, I couldn't use my argument with me, but I think a treadmill in at least one of your training sessions is actually kind of beneficial.
I won't argue with you, because the alternative would be me running and avoiding trucks. I'm not safer, but we're not known for having great roads in this country, or if you're near the park, or you got your Sandy Mount, Conor. There's some people that are not from around here, the other side, and they're like narrow winding roads and avoiding obstacles like trucks and stuff heading your way and stuff like that. Hop on a treadmill, because you know what you're going to get with each step. You're not going to be jumping the potholes and all the rest. You're limiting your chance of injury.
It is.
How do you find, like, so when I hop on the treadmill, like, I notice I'm going to the right and left and I'm just moving all around the place. I find it so hard to like stay in that one place. Do you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you're running too fast and you're just like, oh shit, I hit the front of it there, and then you start going back and you're just like, oh no, this is too far back here now.
I because it's so
sideways,
boring.
The sideways thing, and then you get the wobble and you're just like, oh here.
What treadmills are you using? Take the wheels off the treadmills.
I understand what you're saying, because like when you start to drift your mind, or I look left, walk right. So like something will happen in the gym and I'll kind of look around and then I'm gone sideways, and then you just get your cadence back. But again, I don't look at it too differently if I've just ran off a curb or you've had to do something slightly different in a run, and I get that as well. But then sometimes when I'm really bored, if it's a slow pace or a high pace, I'll do that. I'll catch up with the treadmill and then I'll let my thighs hit the bar that's underneath, just to try and increase my stride when I get bored and make sure I'm like, there's just all sorts of things I'll do when you're on the treadmill. But like that, I'll let myself start and drift towards the back and then catch up on it again so I don't fall off. So there's just little things to keep the treadmill interesting, because it is boring. It is boring. But if in terms of setting a pace, like I would never do my long run on a treadmill. I would never do 2.5 hours. I couldn't. I definitely couldn't.
Well. But you have to jump off 2 different treadmills. Marie, come back here. Come back here.
See you in an hour. But in terms of a short interval session, especially when the weather is miserable, we've had 5 storms in 5 weeks or something,
and they're all weekends as well. Yeah. You said that we look outside now, the sun's out. And
the sun's out, but it was hailstones there a minute ago.
Yeah.
But it's it's like I think the treadmill is a great little benefit, especially for the winter training. And I know a lot of people that never, like, there's a few guys I know in the triathlon club, they have not cycled on a bike outdoors and they have not ran outdoors this year, and they're already setting targets for their triathlon. So like one of their first triathlons will be the first time they've actually ran on the pavement and being on the actual bike. But and their fitness is phenomenal, like, so it's, and they're warm and not miserable, you know, so it's
every little helps.
Yeah. And on that note, that was a good episode. That was a lot of talking on treadmills, which I did not expect, but I might jump on a treadmill now. I don't know with that one now.
Whatever helps you.
Whatever helps get through and get that run in, especially with all the storms and stuff we had out there. But I feel like I'm ending the podcast now and down, don't mention the storms and stuff. Someone say something uplifting before we end this episode.
7 weeks till Madrid.
On that note, guys, thank you very much for listening to this episode of the podcast. Thank you once again for subscribing, and if you could actually please leave a rating, a 5-star review on iTunes, that really help us get the name out there, the podcast they would want.
Would recommend to a friend.
Brilliant. Thank you very much once again, and from the 4 of us, take care.